watching Force 13's live streaming service. As awkward silences go, that was a pretty long one. This is Force 13 Live, and we've rushed to completion the beginning of the live stream, which has now begun, I'm pleased to say. My name is Nathan Foy at Force 13 HQ Live, and we are talking about Subtropical Storm Alberto, which is now at 50 miles per hour according to the National Hurricane Center, and is heading towards the coast of Florida somewhere, but exactly where is still up for grabs right now. As you saw, the satellite imagery, there is the storm right now. That's the latest image. And you can just see, it's starting to look a little bit more tropical. The center of the storm is roughly 50 miles, I think it was, to the west-southwest of Tampa. Was it 50 miles? It was a bit more, actually. 130 miles, just a little bit out. And 185 miles from Apalachicola, which has the highest chance of tropical storm force winds at the moment. I'm joined right now by one of our ever-reliant correspondents, Craig. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
We've been sitting, and when we've not been live, we've been watching Alberto from behind closed doors, and I know in the last stream you were adamantly opposed to Alberto's formation and classification. What are your thoughts now?
It's looking a lot more tropical than it was. It's definitely no longer a swirl, which is a nice pleasant, because now we can move on from naming swirls now. Alberto, yeah, there you go. I think really should have been designated either yesterday, rather than being just a swirl, which was rather pathetic. But definitely now he's really gotten his act together. I'm inclined to say that he is now Alberto. But the dry air that is around the system at the minute on the Ghost 16 imagery, that could end up causing Alberto a few bit of problems that will probably hamper its strengthening any more, let alone some small gradual intensification could be in there, as it is already at 50 miles per hour. So there's been a few other warnings out in Florida. A tornado warning was out, a few severe thunderstorm warnings out already.
We'll get onto those in a
passed.
short moment. In the last live event that we did 2 days ago, wasn't it?
Yeah.
You said that it wasn't a designated storm. It shouldn't have been designated, and I agreed for the first maybe 12 hours. And you'll be pleased to know that 19% of people in the poll also agreed with you, which isn't very much.
Yeah.
So I'm sure the viewers will have a lot to say about that. Incidentally, if you would like to get in touch with us during the event, we are open to all contributions and comments. Start your message with Force 13 in the chat right now, and you can get in touch and we'll answer your questions, I suppose. And personalised forecasts, maybe one or two. People always ask for those. But we better talk about the warnings. A storm surge watch is in effect for Crystal River to the Florida-Alabama border. A tropical storm warning in effect for Bonita Beach to the Mississippi-Alabama border. Might be better if we can actually show these warnings on the image. This is the National Hurricane Center's website. I'm sure you're familiar with it. That's their graphic. You can see the tropical storm warning extending all the way around the Bend region of Florida into Alabama. A storm surge watch means there is a possibility of life-threatening inundation from rising water moving inland from the coastline in the indicated locations. For a depiction of areas at risk, take a look at the National Weather Service Storm Surge Watch Warning graphic, which is quite a mouthful, available at hurricanes.gov. I think the NHC have their own one as well, which you can take a look at if storm surge is what you're looking for right now. There you can see the area shaded in the storm surge watch. And Craig, do you think storm surge will be an issue?
To an extent, yes. Storm surge will be an issue, especially when the storm does come up to making landfall. You can expect some storm surge flooding, mainly along the coasts. But other than that, I wouldn't really call storm surge a main threat, but it's a threat nonetheless. The main threats for me would be rainfall, strong wind gusts, maybe around 70 miles per hour, depending what the NHC is saying for gusts.
Here's the rainfall potential first. 6 to 10 inches possible in some parts of the Florida Panhandle. And a big tongue of yellow there moving north into Alabama as well. And a small area around the tri-point of Georgia, South Carolina and North Carolina.
Yeah, but the point where it moves inland, this is probably where it's no longer even tropical. This is probably going to be going on to probably produce a severe weather event, such as maybe producing a few tornadoes in the more thicker part of the U.S. when it moves inland. But other than that, rainfall would probably be the more significant threat when the storm does make landfall. No, not to forget that storm surge is going to be a constant threat. So when the storm's already either arriving or before arrival, you're already going to get storm surge. So storm surge is going to be pretty much hammering the coastline constant. So there's one threat that's already there before the storm's arrived. And then you got the outer bands you can see in the image that Nathan's showing on the stream. You can see how all the convection, the severe thicker convection, has been placed over Florida, and Florida's been getting some pretty torrential rain out of Alberto, out of that area.
You wouldn't have live radar, would you?
Yes, I do. That's mainly positioned over Florida, but it's got the center that's moving away. From what I can work out anyway.
I'm just getting the animation to load. You sort of have to cycle through all the images before it will play the animation. And we'll be able to see how it's been progressing over a small time period. There it goes.
Yeah, so there you can see the radar of Alberto. You can see it progressively tracking northwest or northwesterly direction on the radar. So this storm, you can see where the dry air would be wrapping around, where these should be filled with rain bands, but they're not, meaning the dry air has started to afflict the system on the eastern side, where you can see the circulation has become exposed yet again, mainly because of strong wind shear that is in the Gulf as well. That doesn't help. You can see there in the bottom right-hand corner, two severe thunderstorm warnings. One was an extension in the south of Florida there. That was associated with Alberto, obviously, and a severe thunderstorm that had moved off. I think it actually produced a water spout. I'm not sure. I can't remember. I was watching earlier this morning. But obviously, you can see here, this is where the inflow of Alberto is coming in. You can see where the circulation really wraps up, and you can see where these are mainly your inflowing bands into Alberto. This year is going to be what I would say is his outflow in a way. But the main interest is how strong is whether Alberto will organize any more as he approaches the Gulf Coast, or he decides to fall apart, which there is that chance that he could, but hope that there is a very likely chance that he could fall apart due to the dry air and the wind shear. but I'm willing to see what happens. I know Recon supposedly either investigating the system at the minute or going out later. We'll need to check.
Just leave that up there for a little while. Can you tell us about any severe thunderstorms over the area? Are there any over land right now from the storm?
There are none at the minute. I'll get the warning window up, see if there's else anywhere, probably anywhere, any others elsewhere. Once that does occur, that's not. Well, you can see there the wind vector. So pretty much you're getting round about pretty significant to strong tropical storm force winds at least in there. So they're recording around that. So you can pretty much tell this is up from where I'm positioned the radar. So they're getting some pretty gusty winds. For the warning windows, other than that, there is a flash flood warning, but that's not where we're all watching. So technically, there's one at the end of the frame, so that's the only severe weather warning that's out. Severe thunderstorm warning, there is none.
Do you think we'll see a tropical storm in the next advisory?
The NHC did state that that Alberto is very likely transitioning to a tropical storm, and very likely will become a tropical storm in the next advisory later today or tonight.
Here's the latest cone on the screen right now. Every dot corresponds to 12-hour periods from now, so there's the first 12-hour point. And then landfall in around 24 hours. Pretty much on top of Panama City, it's saying at the minute. Of course, there's a cone round there which extends from just east of Pensacola to halfway to Tallahassee. So, where do you think? Do you think landfall is set in stone for that particular area, or may there be another deviation? It's gone east of forecast the whole time so far.
Yeah, that's the part that remains questionable, whether it will make another deviation. I would be inclined to agree with the landfall area, but I would be willing to see whether Alberto makes another deviation. I mean, as already said, this thing has been forming more centers than Colin did. Even though that didn't even have one. But this thing's been moving a little bit further east than Ethel has already stated. So whether it pushes back towards the forecast track and goes towards where its predicted landfall is, I'm going to mainly agree for where it is just now, unless I see another deviation.
Now, looking at the radar there, is it indicative that the southwestern side there appears to have the strongest rainfall, at least from what the radar's seeing? Is that actually true? And that's interesting if it is, because the strongest winds are on the eastern side, and until recently they said that there were no tropical storm force winds on the western side.
Well, this is very difficult to tell, considering that this is on the edge of the radar. So this is pretty much what the radar is trying to stretch and see. So this is infringing on the edge of the radar's viewing area, because here you can see where the rain bands fade away and just vanish. This is the edge of the radar. So the center of Alberto is actually starting to either emerge from the convection due to the strong wind shear, or it's moving, as it's already said, it's moving out of the radar range, which I'm thinking is moving out of the radar range because this is progressively gotten closer to the edge of the radar. So at some point, we will very likely not be able to see the main center of Alberto. I don't think any of these two radars up here would see it, so I would probably need to have a good look for one.
Now, apparently there is a special marine warning out off Key West. There are some significant thunderstorms there. You able to see that?
Yeah, there's just a special marine warning.
Now that may move inwards towards the Everglades, so there could be some severe, significant thunderstorms. In fact, there's one small thundery looking thing just east of Naples as well.
If the Key West radar would like to load and once it's gone down.
In the meantime, I might just go through some warnings. There's a rip current statement. A high rip current risk remains in effect from 8 AM this morning until Monday afternoon. This is South Florida. Where exactly are we looking at there? Coastal Collier, mainland Monroe counties. High risk of rip currents. And obviously we're looking at flooding risks as well. There is at least one flood warning out right now. Flood warning has been extended for the following rivers in Florida: the Miaka River at Miaka River State Park and the Alafia River at Riverview, under flood warnings right now in the southern part of Florida. Just looking further north, maybe one or two others, some near Tampa as well. That might be the same one we're looking at just then, yep. And then obviously further north you've got the Storm Surge Watch, which, as we said, extended around a significant area. And flash flood watches for very large parts of several states. We're talking about southern Florida, western Florida, the panhandle of Florida, the extreme southwestern Georgia, and extreme northeastern Georgia as well, by the way, southern Alabama and extreme southeastern Mississippi. You'll be able to see it here on the National Weather Service's chart. And there's also some flood watches out over further north as well in the Carolinas and just about over into Tennessee too. So everyone is preparing for potential flood issues, and that's probably going to be the main impact with this storm. Estimated peak of 60 miles an hour, which isn't huge. Obviously it is, you know, you don't want to be heading out in that weather, of course, but we're not talking about extreme structural damage from winds. But, you know, the usual rules apply. Don't do anything stupid. And of course, there could be higher gusts.
Yeah, you would like to hope that people are responsible during tropical storms, let alone hurricanes.
Indeed. So the latest, Alberto, as of 11 AM Eastern Time, is 130 miles from Tampa and 185 miles from Apalachicola, and the pressure is 994 millibars. It's moving north at 14 miles per hour. So at this rate, Apalachicola, 185 miles. If it was to make a beeline for there, and it's moving at 14 miles an hour, that is just over 10 hours, 12 hours. You were to extrapolate that. I don't know. I don't suppose it's worth looking at any models, Craig.
Is it?
I don't know, is it? You tell me.
Well, that's...
Have they all agreed on intensity, and have they all agreed on where landfall is? I guess those are the main...
I haven't checked them today, but as far as from what I've been seeing, that they've at least been having some form of agreement, but in terms of landfall, I would have to check again, because the last time I checked, I think would have been 0Z or 06.
Well, you do that then, I guess, but in the meantime, if you've got any questions for us, do send them in. Start your message with Force13, all in text, in the chat, and we are very receptive. We will reply, as long as it's not a stupid question. There is one observation that I did find interesting, and maybe you might want to comment. It looks tropical on the left side, but subtropical on the right-hand side.
Oh dear. Oh dear.
What?
No, it's just what you would call a sheared tropical storm at this point.
It does look like, I would call it a tropical storm at this point.
Well, I mean, call it what you like, a thing, a swirl, a spinny thing.
You're
I
really
think the
dumbing
spins
down,
will
aren't you, Craig?
I mean, you can
Oh, I think we've
call it
lost.
what you like. Pain in the backside is going to get impacted. I would second that because it would be, because it's going to cause disruption with its flooding and maybe some wind damage in terms of trees. I would expect mainly tree damage.
Now, what do you think about the
Um,
tornado risk? You mentioned that near the start.
Tornado risks. They would probably, with most storms, I think this would be what, in terms of strength, would be near Bill strength. I can't remember what tropical storm Bill's wind speeds were when he made landfall in Texas. I know this is nowhere near it, but
A bit
I
different.
think I'm trying to put together what sort of outbreak or what sort of thing could happen. I would expect tornadoes regardless. Outer bands would probably be the greater threat for tornadoes, um, as they normally are with tropical cyclones when they're going to make landfall. So a few tornadoes are possible. Whether they're going to be significant, that remains to be seen. But tornadoes around, say, the strengths of EF0 to EF2 would be probably the more common. It's very rare to see a tornado that goes above EF3. I know the remnants of tropical depression Harvey, yes, he spawned an EF4 in Alabama when he was about to go post-tropical, which
Okay.
I think was one of the strongest tropical cyclone related tornadoes. I would have to look at that.
What is the forecasted impact to Central Florida, Orlando, and over what time frame? Well, we didn't actually put Orlando in the chance of storm conditions there on the left-hand side just then because the chances were quite low. What are they saying for wind probabilities there? 13% chance of tropical storm conditions, and that is pretty much all in the next 12 hours. It's sort of... Well, I suppose this graphic that I'm about to show might explain it very intriguingly. This is the earliest reasonable arrival time for tropical storm force winds according to the National Hurricane Center, and there's a massive kink to the right hand side there, which I don't believe I've seen before, Craig.
A massive kink. Well,
Very odd. I mean, I sort of understand it, but it says there Sunday at 2 p.m. is when the storm will have reached its closest point, I should think, to Orlando. Maybe a little bit later than that. But the next 6 hours is probably when conditions will deteriorate the most, but probably not very much more than what they already are. Blustery and wet, I should think.
Yeah, with a few scattered thunderstorms within there.
That is shows you there as well. Earliest reasonable arrival time, Sunday at 8 p.m. for a lot of the panhandle coast of Florida there, the potential landfall zone, or earlier, of course. And then what's left of Alberto will be moving up into Tennessee and beyond on Monday. But here's what the picture looks like right now, and I think actually we could superimpose radar on this too. Craig?
Just having a look at the SPC. The SPC for today has a pretty interesting outlook. This is all going to be related to Alberto, what you're going to see, except this area here, just ignore that. But this area here, a slight chance of severe weather over Florida. So this is going to be related to Alberto. So any severe thunderstorm warnings, tornado warnings will be related to Alberto. Of course, just ignore this up here because this is just going to be another area. And a 5% risk of tornadoes for today over Florida. So this is pretty much what you would expect from outer bands of a either moderate strength tropical storm. I wouldn't really expect any higher unless there was another factor impeding into that, and it would have to be higher.
Well, I think you answered someone else's question there. How strong do you think this system will be at landfall? Pretty, can't really complain with the NHC's forecast of 60 miles an hour, can you, really, realistically?
No. I mean, 60 miles per hour is it's a pretty decent and pretty beefy tropical storm to hit you.
Or will it do a Hermine?
No! I swear to God, if that thing does it, I'm gonna rage quit. I hope it doesn't. I seriously hope it doesn't.
I don't know what you just said because my output just went, but we did hear whatever you said, so I hope you didn't swear. Anyway,
No.
People also want to know what radar you use.
The radar that I use is an application called GR Level 3.
That's
I'd highly
not what you're
recommend
looking at right now, but it's what Craig had on earlier.
I'll bring it back up once that comes back up, once I do of the such like and the such. The radar application that I use is called GR Level 3, once it comes up on the screen share. It's a very good and a very handy radar application. Yes, it does cost money to purchase it, but you can get a trial for a 21-day trial for it. I would really recommend it. It's a pretty good, handy little toy if you want to call it one. I would say it's a lot better than using the National Weather Service's website. But if that's the only thing you can use that. But this is it's got a lot more radars that you can view, especially if you're using the National Weather Service website. You can view it in a lot more different radars and a lot higher quality radar, which is what I've got on. If you use GR2, the only thing I'm jealous about is that GR2, which is one I used before this, had 3D modeling. So you could virtually highlight a cell or part of a hurricane, and you could put it into a 3D model. So you could virtually view what's happening on the inside. I've used that for, I think, which tornado was it? I think I used it for Canton, where you could see a very clearly tilted vortex inside of the supercell that led to the Wedge Canton tornado. So that was pretty interesting, but I prefer using GR3 because there's a lot more features that you can use on it.
And there it is.
Yeah, that's GR3.
Where is the worst of the conditions over land right now, then? Is it those rainy areas along the western coast of Florida?
The worst conditions right now would be over Florida. So the conditions would then probably very likely wrap around and go into the Panhandle and beyond and out of Florida. So pretty much anywhere in the landfalling area, this is you're likely to start seeing fresher thunderstorms starting to blow up. Anywhere outside of Florida, I wouldn't really worry about these thunderstorms. I would more or less worry about newer rain showers and more fresher thunderstorms, which can really ramp up. So, but going to actually really answer the question, the worst conditions right now are over Florida. As you can see, there's more thunderstorms blowing up in the spiral bands of Alberto. So anyone in Florida who are watching, do expect some severe thunderstorm warnings, more special marine warnings, and possibly the odd tornado warning. So those are very likely for today, as I read out.
Indeed, and of course, flooding remains the predominant risk from this storm.
Yeah.
I think we
also, flash flooding could also be a risk when this thing moves further inland, even from its outer bands as well.
Yeah, let's see if we can take a look at some different satellite imagery now, perhaps. Whether we could maybe get some water vapor imagery up, because the storm was battling a lot with dry air in the last few days, and I suspect that it still is.
Yeah, it's still very much battling dry air. So this thing is
Get that image for you as soon as
having
we
some
can.
pretty significant issues with it. So it's having a hard time with it, having a very hard time.
Here it comes. There's an image.
An image.
Once it decides, very temperamental. You look at the water vapor, and I assume the infrared as well. It doesn't look very good,
No, it doesn't.
and it
It
looks
looks
all of a
like
sudden a lot less tropical, which is, why it's still a subtropical storm.
it's. I'm gonna say it looks a very sad, very depressed, very sheared, subtropical thing.
And I suppose if you could do us a favour and go to the one of the local National Weather Service radars, or if you can do it on your program as well, to look at rainfall accumulations in the during the storm and see how much rain estimated has fallen so far.
Rainfall. Would that be storm total you would
Yes,
want? Storm total. So at the
I'd be
minute,
very interested to see those totals right now.
well, I've got it on the screen share still, so that's a good thing.
Ah,
So here's the total that's fallen right now. So mainly most of the rain's off of Florida,
so
as you
we're
would
looking
expect. So this is where most of
1
the rain from
inch.
yesterday.
1 inch
1
near
inch,
Fort
probably
Myers.
2 inch. But mainly, yeah, 1 inch over land in some areas, but the heaviest rain of 2 inches has remained
Well offshore.
off
Well,
land.
somewhat offshore. I mean, it's been quite close,
Yeah.
really. Some areas there nearly
It
up
did
to
get
3
quite close.
inches.
It really it did. But most of this you would expect it would have been from yesterday. But
Do we know
you
how long a
know,
period that was measured?
probably from anywhere in between these 1 to 3 hours. But I would be very really unclear on how
Huh.
long these would be measured for, because I don't really use that tool that often.
No, it is interesting to look at, though. Definitely.
It is.
I wonder if I could possibly access one of the sources as well to maybe see if we've got an agreement on that. But because we compare with how much rain was predicted, and they were talking about 3 inches, weren't they?
Round about there, I think 3 inches would be the accurate number.
So less than expected at the minute, but there's still more of the storm yet to come.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get some imagery of my own up here to see if we've got any agreement. First of all, we have Key West. You can only see half of it. Move it over a bit. There you can see Key West. A lot of the rain has just fallen there, and a lot of rainfall has stayed off the Keys. In some areas they're not even getting half an inch, which is interesting. So I'm starting to get the impression, to form the impression here, that it may have been a bit of a dry storm, as storms go. Now here's Tampa, what you can see of it anyway. Storm total accumulations, 1 inch in a few locations. Melbourne as well. Cape Canaveral, 1 inch in those areas at the minute. But for a lot of the parts in the middle, Orlando for instance, barely anything at all. But they say storm total. I don't really know how long. Oh, it started at 1 AM yesterday. So that sort of is storm total, isn't it, fully?
Yeah.
Since 1 AM Eastern time yesterday, barely anything has fallen in a large swathe of central Florida. And moving further north, let's see what we've got. Tallahassee. Nothing really has come in yet, but you can see it getting closer. And maybe Jacksonville we could look at as well, because they were expecting 2 to 3 inches in their area too. And lots of it there staying off sure at the minute, but you can see it's starting to increase. The rainfall totals already up to 1 inch actually near St Augustine. So that's just a little look at those rain accumulations, which I think is interesting to look at. We'll probably check back with that later on. If you've got any questions for us whilst we're on the air, do send a message. Start your message in the chat section, Force 13. Half the reason why we do the live events is to get the public response and to be able to help people with their questions or comments. And I think when it's a the community comes together during the storm event to become hopefully the best news source and the best information source. That's our aim anyway, something like that. But in the meantime, there's not too much else to talk about, am I right?
Not much else, unless you want to go over the UK severe thunderstorm risk.
Well, you navigate over there whilst I take a look at a few other things. I'll just bring back up. In fact, the wind speed probabilities is one thing we haven't looked at yet. There it is.
Yes.
You can see according to the National Hurricane Center there, the tropical storm force wind probabilities. It's a very fine line along the western coast from Tampa northwards, but as you get to the Bend area, you can see those percentage chances rising significantly. And I've got the percentage chances in actual numbers here, and I'll go through them all. I don't think they're in any particular order, or they're sort of in a shambolic order a bit. Atlanta, Georgia, 10%. Augusta, 5%. This is of tropical storm conditions. Savannah, 7%. Kings Bay, 15%. Waycross, 22%. Now into Florida. Jacksonville, 19%. Gainesville, 38%. Daytona Beach, 13%. The Villages, 28%. Orlando, 13%. Cocoa Beach, 7%. Fort Pierce, 4%. Naples, 5%. Fort Myers, 8%. Venice, 23%. Tampa, 39%. Cedar Key, 64%. Tallahassee, 74% chance of tropical storm conditions and 5% chance of 60-mile-an-hour winds. St. Mark's, 81%. Apalachicola, which is the highest percent chance at the minute, 94% chance of tropical storm conditions, and actually they're saying a 2% chance of hurricane conditions in Apalachicola, which is pretty much the percent chance of getting a hurricane out of this. Panama City, 86%. Destin, 65%. Columbus, Georgia, 27%. Birmingham, Alabama, 18%. Montgomery, 39%. Pensacola, 42%. Mobile, Alabama, 18%. Gulfport, Mississippi, 7%. Stennis, 4%. Buras, Louisiana, 3%. And Jackson, Mississippi, 3%. New Orleans was on those percentage probabilities, but it's now been dropped, so we assume it's 0. And as you can see on the graphic, it is pretty much out of that, or it actually is out of that probability cone. Now, Craig, were you going to the UK?
I mean, we should put.
There's been a lot of thunderstorms here recently.
Well,
which we could
down there has been.
Which we could give a small plug if you want to.
Well, if we're running out to things to say about Alberto, I mean, we
this moment
so might as well. Over the UK for the past couple of days, there's been some pretty decent strength thunderstorms that have moved over England. My area has been lucky enough to dodge them.
Oh yes.
Darn it!
I thought you were a storm chaser. Don't you want them?
I think that's what's wrong with my area. If you want them, you've got to go find them. But knowing my luck, we'll probably get one and say it's around stupid o'clock in the morning or so. But across south east England to Wales and the western side of England, all the way to Belfast, they're stretching that far. There's been some pretty significant thunderstorms, mainly across the Midlands, is where they've been really gaining strength. There's one over just west of Birmingham right now that's looking fairly strong in terms of rainfall. around about 32 millimeters, according to the Met Office
Yeah,
radar.
an
Remember, if
inch.
you're in the UK and you have a forecast issued by Met Office, wait on it until you
Oh
wait and
boy.
see to believe it. But you know, but for once, the first few months of summer. Well, let's just ignore the end of April. Uh, I've been actually pretty decent for once in the UK. I mean, we're just getting used to this strange yellow thing that's in the sky. We're not really meant to see it.
Here's a live view from Force 13 HQ showing how nice it is. It's pointing towards the west, and you can see over there in the distance there's some significant cloud cover. There were some isolated thunderstorms over in that direction. There is a big one right now, around 60 miles south of here. Well, we'll see if we get any thunderstorms, but my money is on no. Okay, back to Florida.
Away from our boring weather.
Let's take a look now back at the water vapor imagery, and you can see how it's been progressing. And we've seen water vapor imagery, Craig, for so many storms now. In the 3 years that we've been doing live events and 6 years that I've been doing updates, and there really isn't very much of it over Florida. And
No,
that
there
dry
isn't.
slot in the east, which is, corresponding to the openness on the visible imagery, isn't it? As I may be able to
Yeah,
show you.
that's where you would see the dry air getting in.
That's clearly where all the dry air is, and it's interfering with any significant rainfall over Florida. So what we're saying is rainfall totals may be insignificant for some areas, and it's sort of a hit and miss scenario right now, because you've got a few significant tops over Florida, but they are very isolated, aren't they?
Yeah, they're very isolated. Radar. They are very, very weak tops are over Florida. You can see there. I mean, most of this should actually be rainfall, not scattered thunderstorms. There should be thunderstorms embedded in them,
Yes,
but
and there are.
you know, yeah, this is somewhat like when Hurricane Irma was approaching. You seen that southern side of Irma when she was approaching Florida. That southern eye wall just completely collapsed, mainly because of dry air that got in. Let alone there was very significant wind shear that she got hit by. But they got hit by the southern eye wall, what was supposed to be that, and there was hardly any wind, hardly any, and let alone rainfall. So I would pretty much say that this is what's sort of happening, is except that this isn't obviously a Category 3 hurricane or whatever, which thank God for that is not. But you're seeing a lot of dry air, and you're seeing where it's obviously wrapping in with the eastern side, and it's causing the rain bands a lot of grief, forming on the eastern side over Florida. As you're seeing there, you see any thunderstorms that do spawn, they're just instantly, rapidly intensifying, peaking, and then dying. So as you would expect with thunderstorms and tropical cyclones. But I mean, I want to know how many problems Alberto is going to end up suffering on his way to landfall, mainly caused by this dry air.
Well, Alberto shouldn't have formed so soon. He's only got himself to
Yeah,
blame.
I would agree if it was, well, maybe be going off on one saying, oh, how it should have been formed today because look at how well it's rotating and all that stuff. But I would have agreed hadn't it been designated, say, north of Cuba. I would have definitely agreed. But the fact was that it had a very sad, very pathetic, very convectionless little swirl that got named was just. I honestly thought I'd seen we'd seen everything. Naming Colin was a cloud without a center, a storm with one wind bar with tropical storm force winds, and now we're naming swirls.
Craig, you seeing
I
this?
mean, yeah, we've seen a lot now. We've
You
seen
can
it.
see the center of Alberto, and it's almost mesmerizing that. But you can also see near the Fort Myers area, just east of there, some thunderstorms poking up there. A line of them, really, extending down towards the Everglades.
Yeah,
Just
this is
east of
another.
Marco Island.
Yeah, this is another little added-on gift, as you like. If you're a storm chaser, really, if you're going to get a tropical cyclone, I always expect some form of squall lines in tropical storms or hurricanes, mainly tropical squalls. This is a good example of a tropical squall, or just a squall in general. So this is a very nice squall line. As you can see, it's starting to really ramp up. So I wouldn't be surprised if this does go severe warned
You think?
at some point if it continues to strengthen.
We'll bear that in mind, I suppose. I'm just trying to get something else up on my resource now. That may take some time. There is a special marine warning off the coast, and actually I think something else is going on now. Just a moment. I know I'm not being very helpful. I think this has just happened, that tropical storm warnings have been extended inland. I don't know if that is new.
Let's have a look.
Or whether that
I mean,
happened some time ago.
it could be.
I don't know. Just to reiterate some flood warnings as well further north. The Shoal River near Crestview affecting Okaloosa County in northern Florida. Don't know exactly where that is because I'm not local. From early Wednesday morning until Thursday morning, that flood warning is. Until Thursday morning, that means it's in effect. That's a strange wording there. Minor flooding is forecast. Flood stage is 8 feet. It's expected to get to 8.5 feet. Of course, that storm surge watch is also in effect right now as well. In just a moment, I'm going to have an extended loop of what we were just seeing earlier. That goes 16 1-minute imagery of the whole of the whole of today's proceedings so far. Here they are. Now, I don't know if you've got any observations you'd like to make on this, Craig.
Once I get the stream up.
Has it improved on sunrise this morning? And where are the strongest winds now?
In a way, you could probably say it has, in a way, but I haven't really seen much change. But it has got, I would say, if you were going to go over the course of its life, I would definitely say this is a hell of a lot better than what it was on day of birth, first and second day after birth. So I would really tend to agree that this storm has somewhat improved drastically, but with this the LLCC becoming exposed mainly because of A, wind shear, and B, dry air. I mean, anything's possible. What could happen with this storm? But I'm just looking at that you've got playing on the stream, Nathan. Is it me or am I seeing vortices, little vortices spinning up? Yeah, I'm just questioning it whether it's just me or am I seeing little vortices.
You'll have to help me out here.
Small, brief vortices.
Where?
On the northern side of the circulation is just becoming exposed. Very early on in the frame, just when sunlight really gets over the storm.
One that just jumped up north there at the very beginning. And there's another weak one going by now. Yeah, I see what you mean. I think they're too tenuous to be so-called other vortices, to be honest. I mean, it's not very often we get to see the inner workings of a storm. It might happen in other tropical storms of similar intensity.
Probably the best bet of that happening would be Cindy, because we've seen that happen.
They could do a Cindy, yeah.
Could do.
That was something else, wasn't it?
That was a very very interesting tropical storm, having 5 vortices inside of a center.
Crazy. And there's the full picture again, and the storm's influence now extending to the northeast, just about reaching Georgia, and who knows where else. Well, we've lost that temperamental image there. Is there anything else you'd like to point out elsewhere in the US weather events going on today? Well, actually, no. We'll talk about that a little later. We've got 1 or 2 questions, I think. How do you think this hurricane season will pan out compared to last year? Okay, because of course we have to compare everything to last year.
I mean, I think we should just give 2017, it's last year's season, a complete rest, really, because to be honest, the storms that you've seen in that, I don't know whether we would see them again, but we probably will. But obviously, I don't think we would see anything as catastrophic as Hurricane Harvey, Hurricane Irma, and Hurricane Maria. I would expect maybe another hurricane like Nate type of strength, maybe not movement, but another Nate, maybe another Philippe in the latter stages of the season. But anything significant would probably be not as I'm not really expecting anything as bad as last year, but I would expect a few major hurricanes at least.
You do?
I would expect a few major hurricanes, but nothing as bad as last year. Nothing as bad.
Well, that's an interesting comment. We're looking at this loop again here, Craig, a wide shot now, and it looks to me as though a large bulk of the storm is just off the east coast of Florida, actually over the Bahamas and north of there.
Yeah, this is showing it could be a very large system that's got a very broad area of convection.
It always was, wasn't it? Yes.
We've seen that when it was going over Cuba, that its convection was very large and very, very thick. So, I mean, this storm, it's just got that very odd shape. If you can see, it's more like more looking like a very sheared tropical storm, but
yeah.
As I said, it does have that slight subtropical hint to it, but I would more or less say that it is tropical. I would be very inclined to say that it's tropical now, but you can see the dry air slot where the dry air is just getting in. So this is where you would probably now expect dry air to start causing Alberto a lot of trouble in terms of further strengthening. So I'm very interested to see what it does. I'm very interested to see what Recon finds when they do another, because I would be suspecting that they would do another. If not, they are. I'll have to check. But I wouldn't really expect to say that this storm has gotten any stronger. Probably sustain its strength, maybe for a couple of more advisors, maybe strengthening to 55 miles per hour. But
if that existed.
Yeah, if that did exist.
It doesn't, in NHC's terminology.
But in a way, if it did, that's probably where it would go. I wouldn't really want to call it 60 miles per hour, but then again, that's what you would have to go even if the storm was producing 55 mile per hour winds, which obviously doesn't exist.
Well, that's the technicality.
Yeah, with the extreme technicality that's there.
Well, I suppose that will be it for us for now. I thought we'd come on here and do maybe an hour or so, and we're just about to have done. What I think will happen later on this evening, there will be more updates, of course. I don't know whether we're going to go live again later on when we get into the evening hours in the US. But if we do, I'm sure Craig will be here again.
Yes.
Is that a promise?
There will be no downfounding this cyclone because there's no point anymore.
Yeah. But, yeah, there we are. 94% chance of tropical storm force winds in Apalachicola, and according to the NHC, and I was just checking my tone there because I don't want to make it sound hypish at all, but I'm just saying, they say a 3% chance of hurricane conditions in Panama City. But I don't think that will happen.
I'm hoping that that's not really basing on sustained, but I'm guessing that it would be sustained chances.
Yes, 3%. Well,
I would more or less say if chances of hurricane force winds would probably in terms of gusts, not really sustained. I wouldn't really have to say it would have a chance of getting there.
Well, that's not what they're saying. They're saying for sustained winds, but there we go. Well, I'm sure we'll have more to report on later this evening, but that's going to be all from us for now here at Force 13 HQ and beyond. It's a very busy time around the world. We had Cyclone Mekunu, which is still sort of there, in the Saudi Arabian desert, where it's going to dig itself a grave, and thunderstorms in the UK as well, which is where Force 13 is based, so we sometimes are on top of that as well, but there's a lot going on. We'll be back.
Not to forget the UN vest of 94A.
94A, just west of India as well. I speculated on that last night. It looked pretty good on the Himawari 8 imagery. It was just blowing up. But there we go. If you'd like to get in touch in the meantime, you can follow Force 13 on any of its social platforms, Facebook and Twitter. Search Force 13 all in text. And obviously we'll keep you up to date on our schedule and what we'll be doing in the meantime on there, and of course here on YouTube as well, because we like to keep people informed, of course. You can also add Force 13 on Skype and my personal account on Discord, Fool13, at extension 9094 for informal tropical weather chat. We do have a server on there as well if you happen to be interested. But from here at Force 13 HQ and beyond, that's us saying goodbye for now. We'll be back again in some shape or form this evening. Goodbye.